And we're gonna miss him dearly. Nolan is the kindest soul. He never met a stranger. He loved everybody. He didn't care if you were black, white, purple, green, looked like a marshmallow. Like, he just wanted everyone to be in peace with one another. This is not how I wanted the world to meet my son, but here we are. So, as you know, I'm Christine Wells-Wansley. I am Nolan Wells' mom. And
now over to the growing mystery surrounding the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. His family and friends now in mourning after he went on a 4th of July boat trip and never returned.
July 4th, 2026. Just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 12 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, on the edge of an uninhabited barrier island, a boat full of teenagers is taking on water. The bilge pump, the little machine that keeps a boat from filling with sea, has failed. One of them gets a towing company on the line, and in audio later obtained by NBC News, you can hear it. The urgency. "We're sinking. Can you all please come?" The dispatcher asks the standard question, the one they always ask. Is everyone on board? Is everyone in good health? And the answer comes back. Yeah, everybody is on board. Everybody was not on board. Somewhere behind that sinking boat, on a wild roadless island you can only reach by water, was an 18-year-old named Nolan Wells, a college football player, a son. A kid who, the night before, had cooked baked salmon for his mother because she'd had a long day at work. The boat made it home. Nolan did not. 2 days later, a park ranger found him face down in the water off the island's northwestern tip. The sheriff says he suspects an accidental drowning. The family says that's impossible. The FBI is now involved. A grand jury is waiting. And in the space between those two positions, the internet has built an inferno. Viral videos, AI fakes, death threats, and a grieving mother begging strangers to stop. Tonight, on Case Frame, we're going to do what the algorithm won't. We're going to separate what is actually known from what the internet got catastrophically wrong. This is the death of Nolan Wells. Before we begin, Case Frame covers cases like this with one rule: verified reporting only, clearly separated from rumor. If that's the kind of true crime you want, take 1 second and subscribe, because this case is still moving, and there will be a follow-up. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go to Ocean Springs. Ocean Springs, Mississippi. A small coastal city of about 18,000 people, sitting just east of Biloxi, where the town's rhythm runs on shrimp boats, art festivals, and high school football. This is where Nolan Xavier Wells grew up. Ask around Ocean Springs, and a picture forms fast. A 2025 graduate of Ocean Springs High School, a multi-sport athlete. The kind of player coaches don't just remember for his hands, they remember him for how he carried himself. His former high school coach described him as so much more than an outstanding football player. A young man defined by humility, respect, and hard work. A leader by example. Nolan took that reputation to Southwest Mississippi Community College, where he earned a spot as a wide receiver, number 16, heading into his sophomore season. On signing day back in 2025, a local news camera caught him beaming, calling the chance to keep playing with his teammates a true blessing. He was one of 6 kids. His mother, Christine. His father, Elmore, a big, close family on the Mississippi coast. And here's the detail that sticks with almost everyone who covers this case. On the night of July 3rd, his last full night, Nolan's mother came home from a brutal day at work, and her 18-year-old son cooked dinner for his parents, baked salmon. Then he went to stay over at a friend's house, the way teenagers do in the summer, because the next day was the 4th of July. And on the Mississippi coast, the 4th of July means one thing for the young crowd. It means Horn Island. To understand this case, you have to understand the place. Because Horn Island is not a beach you drive to. It's a barrier island roughly a dozen miles offshore, part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, which means it's federal land. Hold on to that fact. It matters later. There are no roads, no houses, no lifeguards, no cell towers of its own. Just about 14 miles of white sand, dunes, pine trees, and lagoons, surrounded on all sides by open Gulf water. You get there by boat, or you don't get there at all. And every 4th of July, boats go. It's a tradition. Young people from Ocean Springs, Biloxi, the whole coast, they anchor up, wade in, and turn a wild island into a floating block party. July 4th, 2026 was no different. According to GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, later reported by CBS News, one of the boats connected to this case left a private dock at 9:56 in the morning and reached Horn Island at 11:14. And it wasn't alone. Multiple boats, multiple friend groups, all converging on the same stretch of sand. By early afternoon, the crowd on that beach was somewhere between 100 and 300 people, many of them former classmates from Ocean Springs High. Friends later said openly that the group had been drinking since late morning. It was the 4th. It was a send-off. One friend called it a last hurrah before everyone scattered back to college and jobs. Photos from that afternoon show Nolan right in the middle of it, smiling, at ease, surrounded by friends. And in some of those group photos, there's a detail that, months of context later, the entire country would be arguing about. Nolan appears to be the only black teenager in the frame. At the time, on that beach, by every account, it meant nothing. This was his crew. These were kids he'd grown up with. But hold on to that image. Because when this story went national, that photograph became a Rorschach test for America. The last confirmed sighting of Nolan Wells on Horn Island was at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 1 hour later, everything started to go wrong. 4 p.m. On the west tip of Horn Island, the boat that several of Nolan's friends came out on develops a serious problem. The bilge pump quits. Water is coming in faster than it can be pumped out. This is the moment of that phone call from our Cold Open, a private towing company. A frightened voice. "We're sinking. Can you all please come?" And the answer to the dispatcher's welfare question, the answer that will be replayed, dissected, and agonized over, yeah, everybody is on board. Now, to be completely fair, and case frame will always be fair, that phrase almost certainly meant everybody who left with this boat is on this boat. Nolan's friends have been consistent on this point. Nolan wasn't leaving with them. They say he told them he was staying on the island a while longer, that he'd met a young woman he wanted to keep talking to, that he'd catch a ride back with another group, which on a beach with 100+ people and a flotilla of boats was a completely normal plan. At 4:31 p.m., the GPS shows the crippled boat leaving Horn Island. Its track home is oddly specific, and investigators have mapped every minute of it. Back toward the mainland, into Fort Bayou just before 6, at its dock by 6:06, moved to the Fort Bayou boat launch at 7:19, and then hauled out of the water entirely and towed overland to a residence in Biloxi. Here's what else was on that boat when it left the island: Nolan's cell phone and Nolan's keys. Now, again, both sides. One of Nolan's friends, 20-year-old Triseston Shepard, later explained this to national reporters in a way that rings true to anyone who's been on a boat day. Nobody takes their phone into the saltwater. He said Nolan set his phone on the boat's dash, next to roughly 15 other phones. It was a beach pile. That part by itself may be perfectly innocent. But it means that when the sun went down on Horn Island, Nolan Wells, if he was still out there, was on a roadless, uninhabited barrier island 12 miles from shore with no phone, no keys, and no boat. Hours pass. At around 11 o'clock that night, one of Nolan's friends calls the United States Coast Guard and reports him missing. Around midnight, the call every parent dreads in reverse. Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother, contacts the Jackson County Sheriff's Office herself. And in the early hours of July 5th, she does what mothers do now in the digital age. She posts, publicly, desperately, asking anyone, everyone, if you're a praying person, pray. Pray he's found alive, safe, and unharmed. There's one more thread from this night that we have to plant now, because it becomes central later. That young woman, the one Nolan reportedly stayed behind to talk to, according to the family's attorney, when investigators eventually spoke with her, she said something that doesn't fit the timeline you just heard. She reportedly told them that when she last saw Nolan, he said he was heading back to the boat. Keep that. We're coming back to it. July 5th. Dawn breaks over the Mississippi Sound, and a full-scale search operation converges on Horn Island. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the National Park Service, because remember, this is federal seashore, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the United Cajun Navy, the volunteer search and rescue force famous for showing up when families need bodies on the water. And out among those official vessels was a boat that had no business carrying the weight it carried. Elmore Wansley, Nolan's father, went out onto the Gulf himself, alongside Nolan's football coach, scanning 14 miles of shoreline for his own son. They found nothing. Meanwhile, the family did something quietly remarkable. Using location tracking tied to Nolan's phone, they traced it, not to the island, but to a house on the mainland where a group of the friends had gathered. The family went there and retrieved Nolan's phone themselves. Then came the morning of July 6th. A ranger with the National Park Service, searching the waters off the island's northwestern tip, spotted something in the water. It was Nolan, face down, gone. The identification was made through dental records, and almost immediately the Jackson County Sheriff made the statement that would split this case in two. Based on what investigators could see, there were no signs of foul play. The working theory? An accidental drowning. For some, that was a tragic, plausible answer.
And now over to the growing mystery surrounding the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. His family and friends now in mourning after he went on a 4th of July boat trip and never returned.
And now we are hearing from the sheriff in charge of the investigation and one of the last people to see Nolan alive.
All right, so ABC's Aaron Katursky went immediately into Mississippi. It's in the place where Nolan spent his final hours of life.
Gulf currents are unforgiving. There had been drinking on that beach. Strong swimmers drown every single summer. For Nolan's family, it was not an answer at all. It was the beginning of the fight. We're at the halfway mark, and this is where the case stops being a timeline and starts being a battle. Over evidence, over race, over the internet itself. If Case Frame's approach is working for you, hit subscribe and drop a comment with the one question you most want answered about this case, because the follow-up episode will tackle the biggest ones. Now, the investigation. Let's build the official record, piece by piece. The body was examined by Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind, who reported no immediate, obvious signs of trauma. But, and the coroner said this himself, because of the condition of the body and the stakes of the case, he sent Nolan to the Mississippi State Medical Examiner for a full autopsy. That autopsy happened on July 7th. The family didn't stop there. Through their legal team, they arranged a second, fully independent autopsy performed in Washington, D.C. by a forensic pathologist with no ties to Mississippi law enforcement. and the person who paid for it, former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. As of this recording, both autopsies are complete. And here is the single most important fact in this entire case. Neither result has been publicly released. No official cause of death, no manner of death. Toxicology, which typically takes weeks, still pending. Anyone on the internet telling you they know how Nolan Wells died is telling you something the coroner himself has not said. What else does the official record show? Sheriff John Ledbetter says his office has interviewed more than 60 witnesses, including, specifically, the 3 friends who were on that boat. He says he personally suspects a drowning. He also says, in the same breath, that he is not ruling anything out. The FBI is involved on 2 fronts. First, assisting with digital evidence, which the sheriff calls routine, because Horn Island is federal land. But second, and this is darker, the Bureau confirmed it is working to address interstate threats made against people connected to this case. We'll get to why. And finally, District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath met with the family on July 15th and told them that when the investigation is complete, she will present the findings to a grand jury to decide whether any criminal wrongdoing occurred and whether anyone should be indicted. That same day, both sides agreed that the sheriff's investigators and the family's independent investigators will download and review the data from Nolan's phone together. Simultaneously, neither side alone. That agreement tells you everything about the level of trust in this case. Which brings us to the contradictions. Every disputed death case has a center of gravity. In this one, it's 4 questions. Let's take them honestly, both sides, every time. Question 1. Did Nolan choose to stay? The friends say yes. He stayed to talk to the young woman and planned to ride back with another group. But Attorney Ben Crump says that same young woman told investigators Nolan said he was going back to the boat. Those 2 accounts cannot both be complete. One of Nolan's friends told CNN he'd never known Nolan to stay behind while his friends left. His own father said the same, that it simply wasn't his character. Is that proof of anything? No. Is it a real contradiction sitting in the middle of this case? Absolutely. Question 2. The phone. The family's view. What 18-year-old walks away from his phone and his keys? The friend's view. Nobody carries phones into the surf. Nolan's was on the dash with 15 others, and staying behind spontaneously means your stuff leaves without you. Both readings are coherent, but here's the wrinkle Christine Wansley added. When she got the phone back and looked through it, she says Nolan's Snapchat accounts had no photos or videos from July 4th at all. From a teenager who, she says, documented everything. Were they deleted? Never taken? Lost to a sinking issue? Nobody publicly knows, and that is precisely what the joint forensic download of that phone is designed to answer. This question has an expiration date. The data will speak. Question 3. The timing. Nolan went into the water whenever he did, sometime after 3 p.m. on July 4th. He was found the morning of July 6th. The family asks, why did it take that long, with that many agencies, on an island that size? Search experts would tell you 2 days over open Gulf, water is tragically ordinary. Both things can be true. Question 4. The swimmer. This is the family's bedrock. Nolan was a college athlete in peak condition and he could swim. To them, accidental drowning is not just wrong, it's an insult. The sober counterpoint: fitness is not drown-proofing. Currents around barrier islands kill strong swimmers every year, and there was alcohol on that beach, though notably a spokesman for the volunteer search group has claimed, unofficially and without confirmation, that Nolan's blood alcohol was not at an intoxicated level. Treat that claim with care. It is not an official finding, so where does that leave us?
The family of 18-year-old Nolan Wells is demanding answers after he was found dead days after disappearing during a 4th of July boating trip with friends to a remote Mississippi island. Now his parents are calling for a full and transparent investigation into what happened. Our Madison Scarpino is live with the very latest on this mystery. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Aisha. Well, the parents of Nolan are saying things that they're hearing about their son's disappearance and death are not adding up. Prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump is now representing the family. He is leading an independent investigation as he says the family has distrust in Mississippi law enforcement officials. Here they are at a press conference in New York yesterday. Crump says the family is not going to accept that Nolan accidentally drowned, as law enforcement has allegedly alluded to. They say their son was an athlete and a good swimmer. Here's Nolan's heartbroken mother.
We just want to know. We just want to know what happened and why our baby didn't come home.
This all comes after Nolan took a boat to Horn Island on the 4th of July with a group of friends and never returned. His disappearance prompting a big search before his body was found on Monday. And the Wells family saying there are a bunch of questions still about what happened. For example, the family says Nolan's friends had his phone after his mother tracked it down. They also had his keys. And his mother says it appears texts and Snapchats on the phone had been deleted. They say the friends said Nolan insisted on staying behind while they returned home on the boat, but Crump says that's not like him.
We continue to be steadfast and trying to get to the truth.
The parents of Nolan Wells and their legal team, led by attorney Ben Crump, say they received some assurances Wednesday about the thoroughness of the investigation as tips pour in.
We're getting about 50 calls a day to 100 calls a day.
The 18-year-old college football player was last seen on July 4th on a boating trip with friends to Horn Island, 10 miles from Mississippi's Gulf Coast. GPS data obtained by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources shows the boat arriving at the island at 11:14 in the morning. Friends Wells was with told investigators he chose to stay behind on the island.
With a case where two statements are simultaneously true. 1. There are real, unresolved contradictions. 2. After 60-plus interviews, law enforcement says it has found no evidence of foul play, and no one has been charged with anything. That tension, not a villain, not a verdict, but that unbearable open space, is the entire case. And it's also exactly the kind of vacuum the internet cannot leave alone. Within days, this stopped being a Gulf Coast story. Because the image, a young black man, last seen at a party with white friends who returned to shore without him, in Mississippi, landed on top of one of the deepest wounds in American history. The family's attorney, Ben Crump, the man who represented the families of George Floyd and Trayvon Martin, invoked Emmett Till by name. Reverend Al Sharpton flew in, held a press conference in New York with the family, director Spike Lee standing in attendance, and summed up the position of millions watching online. They weren't injecting race, and they weren't discounting it, because, in his words, this does not smell right. The support became a movement. A GoFundMe for the family surged past $500,000. Media mogul Byron Allen personally gave $100,000. Tyler Perry stepped in to cover the funeral costs entirely, writing that as a Southern man still questioning his own nephew's death in custody, he knows what it means to not have answers. The Mississippi House of Representatives adjourned in Nolan's memory. Even the governor weighed in, backing his sheriff while acknowledging the state was watching. But here is where Case Frame has to slow down and show you the other side of the frame. The state's public safety commissioner says there is no indication, none in the evidence so far, that race played any role. And he's criticized those assuming otherwise. And the pushback isn't only coming from officials. It's coming from inside Nolan's own friend group. Treseston Shepard, who was on that island, describes a genuinely diverse circle of friends and says flatly, "Nobody in that group would ever hurt Nolan." His words to Rolling Stone, "We would die for him." And the mother of another friend on that trip, who happens to be a county judge, put out a public statement saying her son was interviewed, cooperated fully, and that her family had to deactivate their social media because of death threats. Which brings us to the part of this story that isn't about Horn Island at all. It's about your feed. If you've seen this case on social media, you have almost certainly seen evidence that is flat out false. Let's kill the three biggest ones. On the record. Debunk number 1. The argument video. A viral clip supposedly captured Nolan in a heated confrontation demanding his phone back. It exploded, millions of views, as proof of a fight before his death. Here's the problem. Tressiston Shepard went on record with national outlets and said the voice in that video is his own, not Nolan's. In his words, those were not Nolan's words, they were mine. Even the family's own attorney, who initially amplified the clip, had flagged that he couldn't verify it. Debunk number 2. The proof of life pool photo. A picture of Nolan at a pool party spread with the claim that it was taken July 5th, meaning he made it off the island alive. Rolling Stone checked the photo's metadata, confirmed by 2 people. The photo was taken June 27th, a full week before Horn Island. It proves nothing except how fast a false caption travels. Debunk number 3. The AI flood. Christine Wansley, while planning her son's funeral, has had to publicly beg people to report AI-generated videos pushing fabricated details of her son's death and to expose fake fundraising accounts farming her family's grief. Her words, "The internet is unhinged." She's also had to address people joking about Nolan's death, praying, publicly, that they never feel this pain. And the consequences of all this speculation are not abstract. Real teenagers and their families have received death threats, enough that the FBI is investigating them as interstate crimes. So this is the case frame line, and we mean it. Do not contact, harass, or accuse anyone connected to this case. Not the friends, not the family, not the young woman. No name in this video is an accusation. Speculation has already put real people in danger, and it has not brought Nolan's family 1 inch closer to the truth. What might? That's the final chapter.
We are hearing from the mother of one of the boys who was with Nolan Wells before he disappeared. Wells was last seen on July 4th after taking a boat trip to Horn Island and was found dead off the coast of Mississippi Monday morning. Multiple agencies helped to end the search, including the Coast Guard, National Park Service, and the United Cajun Navy.
Those 2 guys went out to Horn Island. They went on the island. They canvassed around. They went and ran a grid with the boat, put the drone up, looking for any signs of Nolan. Did not find anything. By late afternoon, some weather was moving in offshore. So out of abundance of caution, they came back in, and that's when we decided that we were going to put a plane up. The next morning on 6th July, we wanted to find this boy. I wanted him to bring him back to his mother alive and well. I knew that the further we got away from the last time he was seen alive, the lower chances that would be.
As we record this on July 17th, 2026, here is exactly where the case of Nolan Wells stands. On Monday, July 20th, his family will hold his funeral at Center Point Church in Ocean Springs. Reverend Al Sharpton will deliver the eulogy. Ben Crump will speak. And afterward, at the county fairgrounds, there won't be a wake in the traditional sense, because Christine Wansley has asked for a homegoing celebration. Her reasoning, in her own words, "He would not want us sitting around crying." Then come the 3 dominoes. 1, the autopsies. 2, complete examinations. State and independent, with toxicology pending. The family's attorney has indicated preliminary findings will likely be shared after the funeral. The moment a cause and manner of death is released, everything in this case gets reframed. 2, the phone. The joint forensic download, both sides at the table. If those Snapchat files were deleted, forensics can likely prove it. If they never existed, that answers a question too. 3. The grand jury. The district attorney has committed to presenting the completed investigation to a grand jury, which will decide if there is anything criminal here at all. Accidental drowning, undetermined, or something worse. Right now, the honest answer, the only honest answer, is that nobody outside that investigation knows. 18 years old. Number 16. A kid who cooked dinner for his mom the last night she'd ever have him home. Whatever happened in the water off Horn Island, Nolan Wells deserves the one thing his family is asking for, and the one thing the internet keeps burying: the truth, whole, verified, and unrushed. His mother has asked that any demonstrations in Nolan's name stay peaceful, because, as she put it, her son was not someone who liked fights. CaseFrame will honor that by following this case the same way. Facts first, and a full follow-up the moment the autopsy results and grand jury developments are verified. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss that update. And if this case matters to you, share this version of it, the accurate one. I'm CaseFrame. Thank you for watching, and for thinking before you post.